Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin, principal of Simply Improve Health, and I help people to train better and longer, have improved sleep, and enjoy a better quality of life in general using plant-based te- products. Sorry, I'm a bit dodgy today. Plant-based products and simple techniques. Good evening and thank you for joining me. Tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about the conference that I attended yesterday, the annual conference of the Black African and Asian Therapy Network, or BAATN for short, which I became involved with a few years ago, 8 years ago to be exact. But I'll get into that in a little bit. But the theme of the conference was particularly poignant, and even though the subject had been chosen at last year's conference, the timing of the subject couldn't have been more appropriate given the recent Windrush scandal and the problems with immigration in general. And the 25th anniversary of the murder of Stephen Lawrence. So the theme of the conference was actually about the effects of slavery, of colonialism, of brutality, political problems, and the impact that it has had on African and Caribbean and South Asian communities here in Britain. And I must explain, first of all, that BAATN's goal is to support Black, Caribbean, and African and Asian psychotherapists and counselors, so that whether they're students or whether they're already qualified and practicing, this is a place for a minority within a minority of psychotherapists and counselors in general to come together and support one another in different ways. And the annual conference each year chooses a particular theme, and this one was looking at the wounds caused by the aggressions, if you will, of slavery and colonialism, whether it was in Africa or in the Caribbean or the British Raj, what have you. And as people shared their stories, which were very deep and very painful, there was something that, even in all of that, there was something to celebrate, because that we were there together and we were witnessing each other's pain. We were giving space and giving voice to things that generally get suppressed or don't get talked about at all, or it's talked about in kind of almost ashamed tones. So to be in a space that felt safe, where privacy was respected, which is why I can only give you general details. I can't speak of specifics unless I'm speaking of myself. And to hear people's pain, to actually witness it, and to empathize with it, because we've all walked in our different ways, in our different situations as individuals, have all walked on that same painful path. But even in the midst of all of that, there was fellowship, there was tears, there was joy, there was laughter, there was delicious food. Every year the food is banging. Thanks, Dustin. And we then, in an unusual step, the format of the conference was actually different than usual. Normally, there's a series of lectures, if you will, short lectures by experts in various fields of psychotherapy and various interests in psychotherapy and counseling. And then we break up into just smaller groups with different leaders of from the talks. to discuss and bounce around what came up or what was provoked by the particular subject that was being discussed in the workshops, in the breakout sessions. But this time we watched video clips that were put together into an entire video, and it was little vignettes, people telling their stories, whether it be talking about the partition of India and Pakistan, or talking about people coming over in Windrush, or people whose families may have come over on Windrush, or what it was like being in the Caribbean and under the British colonial system and post-colonial systems. So there were varied stories coming from varied places. I mean, most people there were maybe second, third, or maybe even fourth generation British, or they may have been like me, they may have been immigrants. But the one common thread through all of that is that pain, there was a pain that the wider society wasn't addressing, couldn't address. It was something that we had to address for ourselves and look at for ourselves, and look at how we may be perpetuating some of the issues that we deal with, in that we don't talk about them. They don't see the light of day. It's something that's so deep and so personal and so painful that people just stifle it, and then it bursts out of the closet in nasty ways that does nobody any good. But following all of that, and allowing space for people to come and sit in a circle and say their piece, what feelings were evoked for them, and during the watching of this video, while the rest of us sat in the outer circle and stood as witnesses, to hear what they had to say and to take it in, without judgment, with empathy, with sympathy, and quietly, just to allow the person to have that space to air those feelings. And that was really, really very powerful. And it left people feeling a bit, ooh, I wasn't quite expecting that. But nevertheless, we held each other energetically as well as physically sometimes when it was a bit too much for people. And then after kind of deprogramming a little bit and having some lunch, we went into different sessions. Instead of necessarily talking about the thoughts and feelings that came up from watching the video and doing this witnessing activity, some of us decided to use movement to express what they were feeling. If they felt that words wasn't sufficient or didn't have the words, other people decided to to sit and discuss. I decided to go into the group that did art therapy. And that was a fantastic session. I have to say thank you to my colleague and good friend, Chris, who led the session. Fantastic, really enjoyed it. But it was really quite interesting to see what people decided to draw and how they decided to draw it, what size piece of paper they wanted to draw it on, the colors that they used, how the technique that they may have used to make the drawing. As for me, my drawing, one of the things that we were in a lovely center in Hackney, at Woodbury Downs, and it was right by the little not canal, I mean like a branch of a river, I suppose. I'm not sure which river, but a branch of the river. So you had little boats sailing by and people running on the towpath and all kinds of stuff. Really lovely place. And I found that during the watching of this video, and even sometimes during the discussion, what I would do is look out the huge picture windows when things got a little bit too much, and look outside, and to kind of not distract myself so much, but maybe to kind of ease any discomfort that I might have been feeling from what I was seeing and hearing. Because I have to admit, some of the things I saw, well, most of the things, if not all of the things I was seeing and hearing in that video, left me feeling quite upset, quite angry, in fact, and made me reflect on my own wounds, and where things have left me angry because of things that have happened in my life. But in the drawing, and what I drew on it for my picture in that session was what I saw looking out of the window. You know, a little sailboat on the river, you know, a duck in a little pond, and people, you know, walking around. And I titled it "On the Inside Looking Out." And that, when I thought about it, that had several meanings to me. I mean, yes, I was physically on the inside of a building looking outside, trying to gain some, regain some equilibrium. But the process that we were engaged in at that conference was exactly to be looking on the inside, looking out, looking outward at the circumstances and things that have brought us to a place of being wounded, and how and why that's happened, and who, you know, where does that come from, and what's our role in it, and what we possibly can do about that. So it was a day that was certainly full of thought, full of emotion, lots of emotion. But whatever emotions we go through in this conference, in the supporting of one another, it makes us not only better people, but better therapists, whether we're psychotherapists or counselors. And for me, it's been, as a therapist, it's been a particular lifesaver, because the reason why I went to BAATN 8 years ago was because of some advice that I got. I was literally days away from finishing my course to qualify as a psychotherapist, and I was really at the point of quitting, thinking that I had wasted a hell of a lot of money and 2 years of my life, and I was disappointed by my experience. And this gentleman, that I would see from time to time as we would go to our classes for our different courses, said to me, "Oh, you know, you should go to the annual conference of this organization called BAATN." And he explained, he gave me, you know, the information, said, "Here, look them up. You know, if you obviously feel that you need some support, and they would be a good place for you to go." And so I did. And 8 years ago, because the experience that I had as a student was less than stellar, shall we say. It wasn't what I had hoped for in some ways, and it was quite disappointing in others. But nevertheless, I went along to this conference and issued a call, because when I related my experience during that particular conference that year, and I could see therapists who had been working in the field for 15, 20, 25 years, and nodding their heads as if to say, "Yes, I remember that. I went through that too." And that's when the anger kicked in, and I said, "This has to stop. If I can do anything about it, this is going to stop." And I founded, along with a few colleagues, the Each One Teach One mentoring program, which 8 years later, I'm proud to say, that it is going strong and growing year on year, because it was a service that was needed. It was not only to supplement what BAATN was already doing in terms of supporting Black and Asian therapists and counselors, but to this was to bring along and to use the experience and expertise of those already practicing to support and give practical advice on how to survive as the only Black or Asian student in a course was vital. It was vital, and the proof of that is that local schools, local colleges are starting to become more aware of us and start referring people to us. Other students are referring people to us. Former mentees are becoming mentors, to be able to give back. So I really feel that even though I was handed some lemons, I was able to make lemonade out of them. If not for myself, I mean, it's the program I wish somebody else had thought of, but at least it's doing some good. And that, to me, is more important than anything, that people don't have to go through anymore what people like I and others in the past have gone through. It was very difficult to be the only one in your class, and diversity issues were usually half a day, or if you were lucky, a whole day of talks out of a 2-year course, or maybe even longer. So it didn't give much scope for people being able to be themselves, or even to second guess themselves, or to think, am I crazy? Am I imagining that people are acting this way or treating me this way? And I thought, yeah, I was starting to wonder if I was cracking up. But having the support of an organization like BAATN made me realize that no, this is a real thing, that they're even in the therapy room where we're supposed to be non-judgmental and not colorblind, but certainly color neutral in terms of emotion is emotion. You have emotions, whatever color, whatever religion, whatever creed, whatever you may be. But even there, it wasn't always safe to be different. It wasn't safe to have a different worldview, because then you were almost treated like a heretic by your tutors and your colleagues too. So this was a necessary organization to come into being, and the Each One Teach One mentoring program is obviously a worthwhile endeavor, and which grows year on year. So that's my thoughts about the conference. It was, as always, a fantastic experience. It's always great to see the people that my colleagues and I put together in matches with the mentors, and actually seeing their faces and learning who they are as physically, even though I may talk to them often in the process of getting them matched with mentors, or mentors getting matched with mentees. So if you're a student, psychotherapist, or counselor, and in the UK, and are looking for more support, you might want to go to www.BAATN.org.uk and find out about the mentoring program. And that goes the same if you are a mentor or would like to be a mentor, find out what it entails. There's information on the website under the mentoring program, and you can apply for the program online and send it in. And the year runs from between September, matching starts in September. The program runs between February and July. So this year is closed, but for 2018-19, you can apply from September. And that's all from me for today. I thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful evening, and I will see you again soon. And I hope you have a great, great week. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.